everybody, and welcome to Deckbuilding Derezzed. I'm your host, Code Marvelous, and today I'm joined by a repeat guest, Spags of the A&R Pro Circuit. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing, Dan?
Can't complain. We're living in a good meta, but a grumpy meta, I would say right now.
I would agree. I like the meta. There's some interesting things, but I have some old players that are like the game is broken right now, so it's become divisive, and I think it's mainly focused on one card in particular, which isn't in this deck, luckily.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, but but we've had these types of problems before, right? Like when Andy Sucker was just like the runner deck that everybody played. This comes and goes, but we're already starting to see it where people are starting to run their spider webs, people are starting to run hive, and then it'll just make the decks go away, like always happens in the game. It might take a couple months, but it always happens.
I would agree. I think if you can get enough tech out there, people will move away from it, and I found that with this deck, right? If you're too teched against Faust, you're gonna have a hard time against this deck.
Right. So yeah, on the subject of this deck, this is your Pitchfork Hayley Kaplan deck, which is likely to make a very good bid for Decklist of the Week for this week, I would say.
Oh, it already did, Dan.
Oh, did it? Did they already update it?
It just did, yeah, for
Oh
sure.
my god! Congrats! You're like for reals Netrunner celebrity now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, people didn't really know the name Spags before, I'm sure, right? So now it's going to be out there, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean this is the boost that you really need.
This is
to
what I
be,
needed to get that Netrunner celebrity.
But yeah, so as we were discussing before we started on this video, like Hayley is like I think she is like right behind Kate as far as power level, but people maybe haven't put as much work into really refining her as obviously has been put into Kate.
I would agree with that. Kate's just easier, like, we're talking like engineering the future, like Andromeda, when you have these blanket abilities, it's easy to just take any deck and put it into that identity. And I've seen some good Hayley decks. A friend of mine, Nick Soto, Sotomatic, he was the top Hayley player at Worlds. He finished in the top 40 with a stealth build, which I thought really worked well to her ability. But most decks you can just put in Kate, and it's just blanketly better because it's econ, and econ drives the game. And I think here, honestly, to me, this may be the best shaper currently, post most wanted list. I don't know about that, but I just like the build. It's very unique for shaper and very unique to Hayley, I think.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. Just as a brief overview, Hayley is the person that when you install any type of card, the first card you install, you can piggyback another card of the same type onto it. So if you play your cards right, as long as you're installing something, you effectively have 5 clicks a turn. And we can get into later all the shenanigans where you can clone chip something out and then install something from your hand and do all sorts of crazy plays with it.
On the opponent's turn, too.
On the opponent's turn as well. So, one of the most notables, if we're going to start really looking at this deck, if we look at the events, is we have an absence of sure gambles in this deck.
You have an absence of events, period, which to me makes sense because it doesn't work with her ability, right? I mean, it made sense with Kate, it made sense with prepaid voice pad. Once you remove those aspects, I don't know if it makes as much sense, and it definitely doesn't work well with Hayley, right? She was developed as a replacement for the collective, which would have been pretty broken. And she's almost a little more flexible because she has 15 influence. So you can look at the events. Like anything in this deck, it's malleable. But I thought after a number of plays, I mean, I even played a store championship with Diesel in here. And sadly, I mean, not only is Sure Gamble a crutch in this deck, I think Diesel became sadly one of the most unnecessary cards in here. And I love Diesel.
Okay. So let's talk about what we do have. We
Okay.
do have one Leviar lab
Yep.
access,
hmm
just to basically give you that extra legs if you need to restart your econ engine, because a lot of things in this deck are disposable.
Most definitely. And I mean, it's one of the best cards in the game. You're seeing it in so many decks. The ability to reset your deck allows you to run a lot more recklessly, and especially against damage decks and reset. Now, I had an earlier build with no same old thing, and I think Ben Blum pointed out that's pretty foolish and ballsy. And so I decided the same old thing had to go back in if you're going to run Levy. And it makes sense. And it also works with the other events in here right now. But the Levy is just, I don't know, it's just such a beautiful security blanket.
Yeah. We've got 3x Scavenge, which is an interesting include. I mean, I'm pretty sure I understand why it's in there. But you want to go over a little bit about what some of across your plays, what are some of the key targets that you use for this card?
Sure, most definitely. Now, this is a ad. I've worked with a lot of people behind the scenes on tweaking this deck. And I had one Scavenge in originally, and Dean pumped it up to 3. I had a guy, Foil Flaws. He won a store champ with this today with only 2. I can see playing any number. What I like it with is we have a number of breakers that are fixed. Like if you look at Lady with counters, David with counters, Cyber Cipher focuses on a certain server, and it works well with all those, right? To reset them as needed. Also, then it can trigger the Hayley ability, drop a program from hand. Finally, it's almost a sure gamble. If you use it on a cache, that's 3 more credits back to you, and possibly an install from hand. And we're talking each time you fire the Scavenge that way, that's 2 more tokens on each of your technical writers. So really, Scavenge brings a lot of synergy to Hayley.
I agree 100%. It's always been one of my favorite cards, and I mean, even though we still have 3 clone chips in this, it just synergizes very well with the game plan of the shaper, especially now that technical writer's out.
Most definitely.
So we've got a one of Stim Hack. Surprise Stim Hack. Is that really basically?
Yeah, this was a late ad. I've played without it. A lot of these little one-of influence in here can be tweaked to a number of things. I found I was having some issues with food coats, aka Engineering the Future Glacier decks. And the Stim Hack, either early or late, it's good when you need money to beat an Ash, or if you're using self-modifying code or Artist Colony, mid-run, you can install things with it. So in a deck with not a ton of burst econ outside of Technical Writer, it was a nice little include, I felt like, but it could be a number of things.
Right. And when you need a Stim Hack, man, it helps. Like, it helps you close games.
Yep, nothing like a surprise run, right, and 9 credits. And that same old thing, if need be, you can just fire it off on them.
Yep. So, choice of consoles, we have 2x Astrolabe. Can a case be made for something like Maya in a deck like this? Like, why the Astrolabe?
I do like the 2 MUs of Amaya. The ability's okay. I don't know if you can really afford to take tags. That will slow you down because you have a ton of resources. You really cannot take tags in this deck. Now, a shout out to 0 Hour, a guy whose Netrunner DB karma rivals yours. But he kind of gave me the inspiration for this deck, and his original build had New Angeles City Hall and Film Critic, which is a nice little combo, and that would work well with Maya, I think, right? Avoiding tags. But the Astrolabe is so good, so cheap.
It's so cheap.
Right.
Like, yeah. It's basically an Akamatsu mem chip, but with an ability on it.
With an awesome ability. So I feel like in a deck this lean on creds, you can't really afford any other console.
I agree. And once again, it's a cheap way to feed Technical Writer.
Most definitely.
So we've got 3x Clone Chip. One of my favorite Hayley cards. I love the Hayley ID because I think she makes better use of clone chips than any other ID in the game.
I would agree. There's a reason this card is on the most wanted list. It's so easy to use. It creates a lot of problems. Now, Damon doesn't like the instant speed play with this kind of ease, but I feel like it always made the game very interesting for Shaper, right? You always had a lot of, not only solutions, but puzzles to solve that you could do at instant speed. And that's what I love about Clone Chip, especially with Hayley's ability. And that's why I tried to I tried it at 2x, and I think I went up to 3 because it's just such an essential card for. I mean, it really is the definition of Shaper bullshit is Clone Chip, right?
Yeah. And, just doing things like mid-run, bringing out, a cache to be able to pull the Cyber Cipher out of your hand while you're running, you know what I'm saying? Like, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Because one of the problems of shaper bullshit is you have great ways to get things out of the trash and you have great things to go find things in your deck, but Haley's the only one who has a really great way to get stuff into her out of her hand and onto the table mid-run.
Without a doubt. And I mean, just you want to talk about some shaper junk here. First store championship I played this, I went up against a harp deck. I ended up drawing, I had the Plaz in hand before I could install. He 24/7'd New Cycle to go for the kill, and I actually had to use Artist Colony, get a clone chip from the deck on his turn to install the Plascrete from hand. He's just like, oh, okay. Yeah, so I mean, it has a lot of cool plays like that.
That's so funny. That's so awesome, though. Just being like, wait. I have a paid ability window. I'm gonna install Plascrete. Like, it's so good
From hand. Yep.
Yeah. So we have the Plascrete. Plascrete's in there for the same reason it's in every deck. It's a security blanket for meat damage.
Without a doubt. Yellow kill decks are still viable, I feel like. Out of Soul, you still see it. Out of Harp, out of Near Earth, and you need it. And that's another thing for the Levy. I've had people burn through the Plaz, and I got to get it back. And with the Artist Colony, you have the ability even to instantly get it back, which is really nice. So yeah, one of seems good, especially in a deck that can fetch any card at any time.
Yeah. So we have 3x R&D interface, which is just now. Obviously, we talked earlier about how even though they might be cheaper, things like Maker's Eye events don't synergize with Haley's ability at all. So you are really trying to maximize her ability. So this is something that's installable that can trigger her ability. That and just the shaper fact that once you have two of these down, they just can't ignore that pressure.
Exactly, and it also gets around things like Chrysium Grid, which is nice, right? It's always going to fire, and just the ability, like we said, with Hayley, right? We're building up technical writers and the shaper BS where I Artist Colony. Oh, you let me in on the run? Just access one card? No, I'm going to Hayley, Artist Colony, drop one from the deck, drop a second one from the hand.
It's so crazy.
Yep. Oops.
So funny. Yeah, oops. Oh, thank you for not resin that last piece of ice. Instead of seeing one, I'm now seeing three. Because that's what some of this stuff with Artist Colony lets you do. Oh, you decided it wasn't a good value exchange to res something expensive for one access? Well, now it's three accesses. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I just love, like you said, that kind of instant speed play where you're really forcing the Corp to be like, well, what can he go fetch? Like, you know, it puts them in this weird situation where they really have to treat every run like it could become a big deal very fast.
If you have the credits, definitely.
If you have the credits. We got 2x Aesop's Pawn Shop. Since we're running cash, that makes a ton of sense. We also have things like Lady and Cyber Cipher, which if we don't need to like scavenge them in a turn, why not get 3 credits for them?
Plus David, daily casts, even fan sites, other resources, these super cheap resources that become the second free install. Aesops can burn them up, so that's always a nice ability, basically making 3 a turn. Now, a lot of decks run 3x to see him, and I know without Sure Gamble, I mean, he's obviously a huge part of the econ in the deck. However, you don't need him as early, so I didn't feel like you needed 3. Plus, I've even used Artist Colony to go find him if need be, so I thought 2x was enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Like, it's not like your noise where, like, you have to see it early or you can't get your engine started.
Exactly.
So, let's talk about this great card. Let's talk about Artist Colony, the universal tutor.
Oh, so good, isn't it? I mean, when I saw this card, I kind of played it off a little, but I wasn't on Shaper at the time. Then, like I said, I saw a 0 Hours deck in Chicago at a store champ. I'm like, wow, this could really work. We started chatting about it, and I think this is like what Damon doesn't mind at instant speed because it forfeit an agenda is a big deal. However, Shaper has a free agenda in Fansite that they can install. Right when people saw Fansite, like, oh, what a garbage card this is, but this is what facilitates it. Plus, when things like News Team is really popular in the environment right now, this laughs at it. I remember that Harpsichord game I played, ran archives, hit a data raven. Okay, whatever. Got through it. Artist Colony, his 15 minutes to get a film critic. grabbed the quantum predictive model, and then there were three news teams he buried in there. He didn't know I was on the artist colony when he was throwing them away, and that's free fuel. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and along the same vein, the fan site also synergizes very well with things like Data Dealer, like Ada Ian or Andy. But yeah, so that for those of you who don't know, Artist Colony says forfeit an agenda, search your stack for a card and install it, paying the install card, not for a specific type of card, just whatever you happen to need
Anything.
at the time. It's so good.
It's so good. I mean, and yeah, like you throw away that 15 minutes, that brings a great look on their face. Or like I had so many people, they grab it and look, when is this fire? I'm like instant speed whenever you can take a paid ability window. Oh, like they're just like, when they said it, I'm like, oh no, like the plan changed considerably. And yeah, to me, that the deck is built around that card. I feel like
Yeah.
it's such an awesome card.
We have 3x daily cast. It's money. It can be piggybacked using Hayley's ability, and you can sack it with Aesop's. It's just good all around, and it saves our clicks for drawing and for installing. Fan site. So it is an underplayed card, so I'll go over it. It's a zero cost resource that says once it's down, whenever the corp scores an agenda, you add fan site as a 0 point agenda. So it's basically just something that you can pay for free, especially with Hayley's ability, and just later on get free fuel for Artist Colony without having to throw away a real agenda, which feels great.
Exactly. And that's the thing, if you really want to maximize Haley, using it on the corpse turn, and Artist Colony allows you to do that, right? To get that cash at the end of their turn, to do whatever, so you can get that extra install. So, I mean, now you're talking, sometimes not only is she a 4-click run or a 5-click, now she's maybe 6 clicks.
Yeah, it's crazy town. We have a 1x film critic, so you're not necessarily, well, I mean, if you need it, you can go get it. That's one of the craziest things about this build, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on to talk about it, is like, you're able to run so many 1 and 2 ofs in this deck, because you can just go get whatever the hell you want.
Exactly. You know, I played a lot of green decks over the years, and this feels like the most toolboxy because of Artist Colony. Like you said, you can run so many 1-ofs, and I mean, Film Critic is really good, but as a 1-of, it's really hard to utilize correctly, right, or properly, because you need it at the right time. Like, when Harpsichord or a yellow kill deck wants to mid-season you early, you don't have that Film Critic. Oh, do I want to even steal this agenda? But if you
Right.
can go get it before the access, now you have no worries.
Yeah, and also, crazy crap. Like, if you're up against the Harpsichord deck, they're going to score out a breaking news early. You're like, okay, thank you for my 2 fan sites. Now I'm going to go get Film Critic and go to town. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, it's crazy. We have Hunting Grounds, which is something that I've been toying around with my Atom deck that I think is a card that is underrated, especially with Data Raven being as popular as it is right now.
Yep. I mean, this works against a number of things, and like Film Critic also against Future Perfect. I mean, Jinteki's still around, and Polana Foods is going to hurt, and you're also seeing a lot of Komainu. This is great. I went against a PE in a store champ recently, dropped that
Oh,
with the Artist Colony as I hit the guy thought he had me with the Komainu because he had the House of Knives. Like, oh, he's dead. Nope. I dropped this out. He looked at it. What the hell? So great against Komainu. I
I
even
didn't
hit.
even think about that.
Yep, turns Komainu off like a Fem. You gotta think whatever Fem hits. I turned off a guy's quicksand with it, which just seems ridiculous. Toll booth, turnpike, pop-up window, data raven. There's so many targets in yellow.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
And finally, if need be, you can use that other ability to feed Aesop. You trash it on their turn, throw those cards down, feed Aesop. Like, let's say you have a program you need, you feed Aesop. Now that's ability, you can clone chip it or scavenge that card back.
That's true. So we have 3x Professional Contacts. This is the primary draw engine of the deck. I always say Professional Contacts is the best card that if you get it early, it's great. And every turn after the first, before you install it, it just gets exponentially worse.
It's true, but it's so necessary in this deck. Like, you're happy anytime you see it, and when you lose it, if they ever kill it or whatever, you're really sad. I mean, not only the draw, but the econ from it, it really, to me, is like one of the most important cards in the deck.
Right, because a lot of the setup turns in a Haley deck will be draw 3 with Professional Contacts, drop 2 cards. So that's 3 credits plus
Yep.
whatever you're installing and maybe some technical writer cash while you're doing it.
Most definitely.
We have 1x same old thing. We already talked about that. That's, it can be used for other things in a pinch, but it's also just to make sure that you can drop that early, and if you lose your levy to net damage or what have you, you can start the deck over again if you need to. Technical Writer. What can we say that hasn't already been said? Do you have any final thoughts on why Technical Writer is just a fantastic card?
No, super good. The sad thing of making a deck that becomes popular is that you face it a lot on online. And I had a guy yesterday I played, and he had three technical writers, all with double digits on it because he got them early. The card is so good; it essentially is like a stim hack in here. It feels like to me, or better at times. And it costs zero. So you play first turn, play that professional contacts and the tech writer for one click. Oh man, it's so good.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy good card, especially in Hayley, especially when you're playing Levy. Like,
Yep.
it's just it's delicious. So let's talk about Breaker Suite. We only actually have 5 breakers in this deck. So we have one Atman. How much variability are you seeing with Atman? Are you usually setting it to a specific strength? Is it whatever you like? Are you seeing a lot of variety in what you're setting it at?
Well, in the first store champ I played in, it did a lot of work because I had no chameleon nor no killer, so I had no way to deal with sentries. So the Opman was doing all my sentry breaking because I just screwed up when I finished building the deck. But otherwise, the main reason she's in there is Opman 4, especially for food coats. You think of Eli, Ichi 1, Vipers, so many things at 4 strength. Either I'm seeing a lot of Rainbow now to deal with cutlery, and so she does a lot of work at 4. You think about it, anything below that, other things can handle, especially the Chameleon. Anything above 4, the David handles. So that's usually what she is Opman for.
Okay, so we have one lady, which is the Fractor, just because we don't have a ton of influence left over for a Corroder, and Corroder's kind of expensive in the current meta.
I've seen Corroder in the deck. I've even had 2 lady, and you can do that. I think that's very viable. I tried to cut down the 1 just to fit in the hunting grounds.
Yeah, that's fair. So we have 1x Chameleon, which is really feels like a band-aid, you know?
Most definitely, I've had people replace this with the Mimic, with that stim hack influence. I can see that totally because you need something to deal with Architect. And he's basically, the Chameleon's in there to deal with Architect, Caduceus, Turnpike, right? These 3 strength or lower sentries.
Okay. And then we have 2x Cyber Cipher, which, is just, I think, very strong right now. You were just talking again about, things like Viper. We've got Turing floating around. We've got a lot of people playing Toll Booth. There's a lot of high strength sentry action floating around.
Archangel. Yep, totally. So I feel like 2 is perfect in here because you see RDIs are only multi-access. So really I'm only attacking 2 servers. I'm attacking R&D, and I'm attacking the scoring remote. We don't have anything to attack HQ really. So if you have 2 of these out, 1 on each of those servers, you're usually good.
All right, so we have 3x Cash. It's money, it feeds Technical Writer, it can be recycled, and it's a prime trigger for our Shaper bullshit and our Hayley bullshit, because if you just make this one of the 2 cards that's getting moved around, it's just extra money while you roll.
Exactly. And one note there, I have seen people playing Harbinger instead. I've also seen people playing both. The reason I don't like Harbinger, I realized this the hard way, I didn't even know it until I started playing with Harbinger online. It ruins the Hayley trigger, because when you Harbinger, let's say you ESOP it, it counts as your install for the turn, but because it reinstalls itself as a blank card, but you have no other blank subtype, so you can't, the Hayley ability is now lost for the turn. So I said, to hell with that shit. We're going back to cash.
Yeah. So we have Clot to do Clot stuff in Shaper, where you make it so people can't fast advance.
Yep, Clot locking is a great way to win, and with 3 clone ships and Clot and Artist Colony and SMC, you're going to find it.
So, when in my own attempts to test this deck, David was one of the most interesting picks. It's super important. I always feel like I'm running out of counters on it, though. You want to talk a little bit about David in this deck?
The nice thing is you can, with the Shaper bullshit, you can even get it back refreshed mid-run if you overwrite it and use Clone Ship. I think it's a huge card. I've seen the influence used for Parasite and Data Sucker. I've seen it used for Fairy. But I think there are just so many high-strength cards. It's so good. And it destroys Blue Sun. You're right. It runs out of counters. I agree, Dan. But did you see? That's why 3 scavenge, 3
Yeah.
clone ship. That's a lot of uses. And I mean, I don't know if you combine it like against HB, like big like Vikrams and things. I mean, if you can also combine it with clicks, maybe you can help keep it alive longer. I don't know. I feel like it has enough uses if you use it judiciously. This deck doesn't run every turn.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm just spoiled. I like this is a completely different headspace for me because I've been playing Noise for like a year and a half,
Hmm.
and Noise always runs to David because like he can't live without them. Like,
No doubt, but we're not in Anarch here. We have to, this is the magical world of 4 influence card outside of faction, so we have to be very judicious with it.
yeah. Well, we have what are functionally a lot of additional copies of whatever one of these programs we need more of.
No doubt.
So, some shaper blasphemy here. We only have 2 self-modifying codes.
Yes, it is blasphemy. Although now, once again, a shout out. This is Kalimsh Attack. He loves 2x of this. When he saw me on 2x, he was very happy. I agree. It's once again more blasphemy. The whole deck is blasphemy, right? Let's destroy, right, stereotypes, and that's why so many people who used to play Kate are like, oh, this deck. When I showed some people, like, I really trust their opinion. This deck, Dan, I'll tell you what, they're like, that looks like a pile of dog shit, and I'm like.
Right.
Okay, well, fine. I'll play it in some sword champs. I'll put it up there, and lo and behold, people like it. Sometimes you just have to shatter, I don't know,
Right, but it's like
preconceived notions.
It's like with the temple deck that we were discussing before we started. My Mumba Temple NEH deck. People are like, "Oh, Wizard would just shit all over this," and I just beat Wizards with it all the time. Like even in competitive play, because eventually everybody gives up on trashing when you've got like 26 assets and like 6 upgrades.
Yep, exactly.
But it's you got to go outside of that box to discover something new and to move the meta forward. But
Right,
yeah,
and once in a while you have to do it. And so let's say in here, deck spaces are really tight because you want a lot of these little one-ofs. And I played it with 3 of, Dan, and because late game the SMC in this deck is really terrible because you already have your MUs filled up because Cash is eating them up and whatnot, and David's. So 2 of isn't terrible. Plus with Artist Colony, you have a lot of other search if needed, right? So I didn't feel like it was as necessary. And plus, I hate to say, to be honest, that 2 extra credits sometimes is a real pain in the ass early.
oh, absolutely. I mean, Hayley runs very light on money in the early game. Like,
Yep.
from my experience playing the the textbook Hayley or the Harbinger Cash Hayley, it's like an avalanche. Like you eventually get to the point where like by the mid game they can't keep you out of anywhere. But in the early game, I always feel like she's pretty poor.
I would agree, right? So rush decks are a big enemy of this deck. So I can say if you're a little worried about that, go to 3x self-modifying and maybe use one of those influence on a Scheherazade. I've seen that too. Like then you could SMC that out early, and that helps create a nice econ engine. Because imagine you're throwing cash and everything down on that for extra credits. But that's personal preference.
Yeah, I love. Yeah, everyone put your Scheherazade in your deck and make sure to put your breakers on it too. At the last store championship I went to, I brought my Blue Sun deck, and I power shut down 2 different people with 0. Well, they had like pieces of rig on Scheherazade. I'm just like, give me them cards.
Oh, yeah, people forget power shutdown's a card outside of like a combo deck, and right, you have nothing else to protect you in here, do you?
Yeah. So whenever I'm playing Wayland and I see people put breakers on Scheherazade, I'm like, oh, it's so good. But yeah, thanks very much for coming on, man, and going over the deck with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy it. It seems like a lot of people did. It made deck lists of the week, which is cool to see. I didn't expect that much love for it. I think just people were dying for something a little different. Like I said, something that doesn't have that damn Faust in it.
I hear Faust is a pretty good card.
It's popular.
I hear it's all right. Yeah, I mean, and everybody watching at home, Spags did a really long, very detailed write-up, so you can take a look at the deck. It's on the front page right now, and also, get some notes, basically. We're going to take it for a spin on Jinteki against somebody and see how we do. For those of you who don't know, Spags is one of the ringleaders of the A&R Pro circuit, the fan-run tournament circuit for Netrunner. Does a lot of really great work for the community. Yeah, you could check him out at the A&R Pro circuit.
Oh, we renamed Dan A&R Players Circuit.
Player circuit.
because the pro has a stigma to it, and we're run by players, we're for the players. So now we're the A&R Players Circuit. We have, I think, at least 7 in the U.S., 1 in the U.K., 1 in Australia, and 1 in Scandinavia. So we're really spreading out.
That's awesome. And any additional opportunities to play is always great. And I feel like, especially when you talk about like King of Servers or like what we had in the Mid Atlantic circuit, it's a different atmosphere. It's a different kind of mindset than the organized play. I enjoyed a lot.
No, I'm glad, and like you said, just more opportunities. Because if you look at regionals already starting in April here, they're going to be done by June. There's a lot of dead time there throughout the summer, and we're trying to help fill that space.
Right, especially since every gaming store is like, oh, we got the kit in, so we must run the tournament in a week. So you end up with these months where like 7 stores around you are running tournaments.
Yeah, it gets to be annoying, no doubt.
But yeah, so everybody, you can find A&R Black Hats on SoundCloud and on Twitter. We've got a new podcast format, Netrunner Quest, that you can check out. And check out the test run that's going to follow this video where we take Hayley Kaplan for a spin and see how we do. Take care, everybody.